We are very definitely cursed with interesting times, and never more so than this week. A British citizen lies on death's door along with his daughter in Wiltshire, apparently the latest victims of a Russian state assassination attempt. An inquiry's been announced into 14 other deaths on UK soil which could be linked to Russia. The Prime Minister's deadline that the Kremlin explain what has happened whooshed by, and then the tit-for-tat started. Theresa May announced the expulsion of 23 Russian diplomats, cancelled high-level contacts between the two countries and said top-level Brits would be a no-show at this summer's World Cup. The Russians called this an unprecedented provocation. It's hard to keep up, not to mention scary. We know the Russian president is unplayable, but is it already stalemate or checkmate to Vlad? It's very much game on. More than ever, we need to talk about Putin.
And, of course, as we now know, Russia has responded, as we knew they would, and some of our blokes and women seem to be coming home from Moscow.
But diplomats, not potential spies this time. Well, actual diplomats.
We would call them But anyway, OK, let's move to your central point. My only concern is this. When Mrs May and the British government decided on the action that they first did and gave Russia that ultimatum, did they honestly expect Russia to say,
"You're right.
Hands up, you've got us, you know, gee, we shouldn't have done it"? Yeah. So I thought that, now, having said that, I find the stance by, actually, a lot of callers to my show saying, why are we doing this, why are we doing... This is the sort of thing that goes on. I'm sorry, there's only one
why
thing more...
Why are we doing what?
Why are we being so confrontational to Russia? I'm sorry, quite right, thank you. Well, the way I see it, there's only one more hostile action than coming onto foreign soil and murdering, potentially murdering some of your citizens, and that's war. There's only one more step after that. So I think he is playable. My one concern is I would like to see better alliances built with people such as NATO. I welcome the support of the US. I welcome the support of Germany. France seems to say one thing one day, i.e. the French ambassador to the UN says total support to Britain. Then suddenly we see the sort of official spokesman for Macron saying, I think we need to wait. So we need to have plenty of alliances. We need to take him on, but the next step is key.
Afua, can I just ask you whether you feel that the French position is, which is almost like the Labour leader of the opposition's position, which we need to see absolute proof before we raise the stakes, is the right position to hold? Or what do you think?
I think the current situation is very confusing. I think for ordinary people, the idea that a foreign state could be going around poisoning people on the streets of town centres is absolutely terrifying. And, you know, the fact that 500 people in Salisbury were asked to go and take precautionary measures, I mean, that is something that strikes fear into so many people's hearts. But I think it is confusing. I think most of us don't know what we know about this nerve agent. We know that it's military grade. We know it's not something ordinary people can manufacture at home. You need basically state-sponsored or large-scale labs to do it. But we haven't seen anything that explains what the government knows. And when Jeremy Corbyn suggested we would like to see that, he was branded as a traitor, and Labour quickly retracted the position. But that's now, as you said, what Macron is saying. Now, I think that we can't afford to be divided over something like this. You know, as you said, this is a really serious retaliatory measure against Russia, and I would like to see some kind of consensus that it's the right thing to do. But I do feel that there are still more questions than there are answers, and I think that the idea that anyone who questions that is kind of shut down just makes me feel more uncomfortable.
You know, I mean, I kind of look at this and I think the timing of this is incredibly suspicious. You know, the Russian elections are on Sunday. Now that Moscow, I mean, I've just been looking at stuff coming out of Russia today, the people are saying, you know, we are the world's scapegoat. Why would we do this? This is exactly what Putin wanted. Otherwise, in the lead-up to the election, he would have had to explain why the Russian economy has been in the toilet for the last 3 years. Now, they've been living under conditions there, the like of which America was suffering in 2008, 2009. And Putin has done what all Russian presidents have done since the October Revolution. He has created a common enemy, and that is us now. And it's also now the rest of the world. He says, I didn't do this. We say, yes, you did. The rest of the world is now joining in saying, yes, you did. So now he doesn't. He will go to the elections on Sunday and he will win by a landslide because the people look and say, Putin is protecting Mother Russia. We're being attacked by the rest of the world. And he's, you know, you say he's not playable. He's not playable because even if we give him proof now that this is a nerve agent thing, he will still say, it's not me.
But
it's not me. This is what he does.
If this was Putin's electioneering, we all knew that he was guaranteed to win the election on Sunday anyway. He's just shoring up his power base. What's going on?
Well, it's a warning shot, and that's why there are many ways to kill somebody, but to use this particular nerve agent that has a Russian signature on it is a warning shot to other Russian dissidents inside and outside of Russia not to oppose Putin. And I think the other thing we've just got to keep in mind here is the real human cost to what's just happened. And I'll come back to why I think that's important. But let's just have a look at this human cost here.
What we're talking about, sanctions or reaction for what happened in Salisbury, need to be very serious. Even now, what was saying from Moscow, you need to react and you need to understand, is there some kind of message?
That was, if you recall, Marina Litvinenko, the widow of Alexander Litvinenko, who was murdered by the Russians in 2006. Two Russian operatives were charged by our government for that murder, and nothing else was done. The human cost, of course, is she lost a husband, her son lost a father. And why I refer to that is that Putin has done this before and he's gotten away with it. And if there's one thing he respects is strength, and one thing he exploits is weakness, because he's a thug, he's a gangster, he's a bully, and he notices weakness when he sees it.
Hold on.
Last thing I'll just very quickly say is that therefore we need to respond with strength, whatever that response may be, but also this is an opportunity for us to drag Trump away from Russia. So Trump has said he'll back Britain. It's an opportunity for us to pull Trump away from that unhealthy relationship that he flirted with during his election campaign and saying that he admired Putin for some reason.
I just want to... Let's hear what Theresa May said, because there were accusations over the weekend that she had been very limp, not just about this alleged assassination attempt, but also about previous ones. And so this is what she said in the Commons.
They have treated the use of a military-grade nerve agent in Europe with sarcasm, contempt and defiance. So, Mr. Speaker, there is no alternative conclusion other than that the Russian state was culpable for the attempted murder of Mr. Skripal and his daughter, and for threatening the lives of other British citizens in Salisbury, including Detective Sergeant Nick Bailey. This represents an unlawful use of force by the Russian state against the United Kingdom.
But this is quite interesting, Afra, because this could flush out Trump from, as Madge was saying, from his relationship with Russia.
You know, listening to that statement from Theresa May, I partly agree with it. I mean, the response from Russia has been remarkable. The contempt, the sarcasm, the threatening nature, starting to refer to their nuclear arsenal. I mean, it's terrifying.
Did you see the stuff on Twitter the other day where they put files
I
of
did.
what was supposed to be
and actually,
from the Russian
in a way, I'm far more disturbed even than the initial attack by the Russian response. But what she said is also a non sequitur. She said Russia has responded in this way, which is true, therefore it was the Russian state. Now, those two things don't necessarily follow.
But it's only made in Russia, this stuff. It's only made in Russia.
I know that, Carol, but you know, you said that the rest of the world is coming round to our view. It's true and it's not true. I mean, as we said, Macron has said he wants more evidence.
The UN have backed us, absolutely.
Silence was notable for the immediate days after. And now Rex Tillerson, who's now been fired, is the one who's come out.
What he said is, as soon as he had confirmation that it was from Russia,
they haven't got confirmation
he would back us, and that he's done absolutely that. The UN has backed us unconditionally.
He's also said, I'm standing with the Brits on this one. There are only 4 nations in the world that are purportedly able to develop this kind of nerve agent. That was before we identified it was a very Russian-specific one. So generally, it's the French, the British, the Americans and the Russians. And, of course, we didn't attack ourselves, and I don't think Macron attacked us.
I'm not questioning whether the nerve agent came from Russia. And as you said, they leave a footprint which can be traced to a particular...
So what is it you're saying you're lacking in answers for?
I mean, it would be great if we could see that evidence and know about it, because we haven't been told. And maybe there's a reason why, and then it would be good to know the reason.
What do you think we lie about?
It's important to say that...
Carol, I'm not accusing anyone of lying. I'm just saying that we have had a series of circumstantial facts put to us, and this is a big deal.
You must be aware the Foreign Secretary has said it is now being sent to the Office for Elimination of
They haven't had the results yet.
No, but I mean, that is an independent, unimpeachable body. But one thing I want to pick up, which I thought is something we haven't really touched on, which I found truly extraordinary, there was great work done by the Times this week on that, is the 14 other cases that are being reviewed, where people and I bear in mind, we must be very careful because there will be relatives, but someone supposedly died by jumping from the roof of a multi-storey
car. That was actually a BuzzFeed investigation.
That was BuzzFeed.
someone jumped in front of
the British spy that was found in
zipped in the bag, and again, families might be watching, and someone who stabbed himself to death repeatedly. Now, I don't even want to think about the poor family, but that is a very strange way to take your life, to repeatedly stab yourself.
Nick, doesn't it show the arrogance of Putin that he can come into this country, he doesn't care what happens, he's unimpeded by any kind of punishment we can throw at him. He doesn't care that we're going to impose sanctions. He just does it to make a point.
Nick, I'd like to hear... I mean on the face of it, nobody had heard of this spy before his attempted murder. What was the geopolitical purpose of, if it was the Russians, which we assume it was, of them getting rid of somebody so apparently insignificant and then creating such a massive, massive firestorm?
Just want to say that there is a change in the French position, by the way. We're now hearing from the Élysée Palace that they have come to the conclusion it could be, quotes, nobody else than Russia. So that's the official... Majid touched on it, and he's absolutely right. The British way of life is a threat to Putin. It's what Russians will aspire to. They want to come and live in a country such as this. So what Putin has to do is make you realise, as Majid said, you want to go and live there, you think that's great, you have the freedoms of the West, Mother Russia can always come and find you. That's the message.
He also said he would get revenge on the enemies of the state, and that's exactly what happened.
The Godfather in the Mafia, right? They never let one loose string unattached go, right? If anyone has been defecting, if anyone's a traitor, if anyone said anything bad, the only way you can operate, if you're a thug like he is to make sure that nobody gets away with it. The minute one person gets away with it, it's a crack in the armour that is exploited by your enemies.
You can run, but you can't hide from Putin.
We have to run from your debate, but I'm sure all of us can agree that we wish the best to those two people in Salisbury and the police officer as well.